The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello and welcome back to David Mackey's Shiny Side Out, coming to you from Revolution.radio. That's right, if you can donate, please do. If you can't, ask someone to donate for you. How about them apples? I think that works. We've just had a very short break. Thank you very much for joining us yet again. We are still talking about the hypothesis as well as the various epiphanies that came with it. And there might even be epiphanies as we speak. Epiphany is sudden realization of something of significance. That's what we're talking about. And over the last few weeks, we've been speaking about, well, a whole bunch of stuff, really. And most recently, we discussed the age of humanity and things that don't fit into the generally accepted timeline, the dating timeline that we've all subscribed to. When I say all of us, I mean, of course, the establishment, the scientific establishment have said this is the narrative. Here it is. There, you know. You can vary within it a little bit, but you can't vary a lot. If you do vary a lot, as we discussed last week, just what happens to you if you vary too much.
You're on your own.
You're on your own. Now, I've been trying the entire week, because we also talked about this Smithsonian article, A Puzzling Parade of Permian Beasts. Someone really likes the alliterations. Mm-hmm. By Jerry McDonald, which was published July 1992, volume 23, issue 4, page 70 to 79. I cannot find it. I cannot find the article. Now, of course, it exists, but I just can't find it. And I went to the Smithsonian, and I couldn't get that particular. I could get that year. I could not get that particular issue. Right? They're not all the issues seem to be on file there. So I don't know if anybody has got access to, again, Smithsonian, July 1992, volume 23, issue 4. If you have that somewhere, then please send us a link or something, or photostat, like like PDF. It's all welcome. I just couldn't find it. I know I could find it before, Dave. I know I could.
Mm-hmm.
I just haven't been able to
find it. Well, you quoted
from
it. That's right.
Well, that's the thing. And yeah, so I went to the website where we got it, and there was no link there either. It was actually from Mr. Hancock's website, which is cool.
Yeah.
I do trust his information, because he's quite meticulous. Okay, now we did talk about the dating of things. That we said because people talk about this all the time. And this is such and such an age, and this is from that strata, and it's how old is this? This is how old it is, and then people disagree over certain things because it's in the wrong layer of Earth, as it were, or it's wrong in some other way. And the point really is that you get to a place where you ask yourself, well, how do they know all of this? I mean, what is this? What does it mean? There are a number of different ways of dating. Why don't you take us through some of the underlying problems with the dating, as it were?
So is this the interlude?
That's the one.
Excellent. There are, of course, problems with dating. 3 critical assumptions can affect the results during radioisotope dating. Number 1, the initial conditions of the rock sample are accurately known. Number 2, the amount of parent or daughter elements in a sample has not been altered by processes other than radioactive decay. Number 3, the decay rate or half-life of the parent isotope has remained constant since the rock was formed. The aside, of course, which is I highly recommend reading both books, even just for a different point of view, Forbidden Archaeology and Devolution.
So there are assumptions around everything in science. That's just normal, right? But it's important to understand that these two, there are 2 dating methods. One is absolute and one is relative. Mm-hmm. The absolute method is around usually radioactive isotopes, usually, okay? And that only works in organic matter. Okay, important to understand. And then there's relative dating. You're looking at the strata in which something was found, because we understand that geology deposits strata upon strata upon strata for billions of years to form the crust of the earth, the mantle of the earth, etc., etc.
So if you found a cut rock, a shaped rock, a rock that looks as though it was carved or shaped somehow, and you found it in a layer of strata, then you would have to date the strata to gauge when the rock was there.
Correct.
Was placed there, and then you have other issues, because then you go, oh well, if there was a subsidence, was it introduced into that strata artificially somehow? Was there a stream which then filled up again? And there's microorganisms, Mickey, that give all of this away.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, so is it an exact science? Is it a perfect science?
Mm-mm.
The answer is no. And I mean, if the assumptions hold true, if the assumptions are correct, then yes. But we don't know. We don't know if there were any events like, I don't know, massive cosmic radiation that would have changed the isotope count in a certain sample. I don't know. Maybe half-life. I mean, we think we know what the half-life is, but we haven't really been around for long enough to really be sure. Do you know what I mean? So if the half-life is 15,000 years, then, how do you know this for a fact? I mean, well, science is pretty good, but you can never know something as an absolute certainty. But be that as it may, there are problems that we found with dating. There are problems because we find things that just shouldn't exist. We find things that are so old, they completely destroy our view or our understanding of the world. Not change it, mind you. Completely destroy it. Okay? Whatever if these things that we find or have found are, in fact, not fake or hoaxes or mistakes, even one of them, right, then we have a massive problem around our understanding of what went on this planet. We do. We just don't know. Okay? Anyway, so the quick data point here is this. Humanity, all of us, might be a lot older than we had previously thought or imagined. Now, that's not entirely true, though, because Eastern cultures, specifically the Indian civilization, has no issues with acknowledging the great antiquity of humanity. Because they believe in reincarnation. We've been here forever. I mean, you can't even count how long we've been here, right? So this is a really Western view, where we have subscribed to a linear version of history for the most part. With an agreed upon dawn some 6 million years ago, which was of course the advent of our hominid ancestors, right? But that's being pushed back further and further as we find more and more things, right? And we discussed this. I mean, we wrote this text first, Dave, probably 10 years ago, right? Something like that. Mm-hmm. And in that time, the age of the human race went from 100,000 years to 300,000 years, right? Homo sapiens, I'm talking about, and other hominids. And in fact, when we first started the show, Neanderthal was thought to be an ancestor of Homo sapiens.
Yeah, that's right.
And in the short span of 10 years, no, that's not entirely true. Homo sapiens is just us. Sorry, Homo neanderthalensis is just us. Because we interbred. And we were able to interbreed and produce fertile offspring because we find both our DNA and Neanderthal DNA in us. Mm-hmm. If it had been a situation where, like, for example, a donkey was mating with a horse and the offspring was a mule, guess what? There would be no offspring.
They're all
after
infertile,
that.
That's right.
They're all infertile, exactly. So we are close enough to guarantee viable offspring. Okay? That's important to understand.
I can only imagine how drunk we would have to have been.
I don't even know. But
Just
hey,
saying.
People have different predilections.
Oh, then,
right?
Yeah, okay, well, all right. I retract my statement.
There's so many things
That's enough.
leap to mind. But that's why. Tell you what, Dave. Why don't you take us through the next section rather than taking it one by one? Mm-hmm. And I will, if you pause and I have something to add, then I will. But please go ahead, my friend.
So there seems to be the advent of our hominid ancestors seems to be. And we've discussed ample evidence for high civilizations similar in capability to our own, and some may be more advanced, albeit displaying different characteristics, such as different technologies and energy sources, etc. Look, we'll take, wow, I'll keep going. The pyramids, just an example. This is my personal opinion. I don't believe the Egyptians built them, but that's fine. I may not be alone, because they have perfect alignment to the cardinal points. Number one, virtually no subsidence, which is really odd. We couldn't even build the Leaning Tower of Pisa not leaning because of subsidence. We had to save it with weights on the other side to keep it straight up, or as straight as it could be, or as straight as they wished it to be, so it was still the Leaning Tower of Pisa but didn't fall over. Did you know that? No inscriptions were found inside the pyramids. The ones that existed are likely fake, and we've talked about that because they match the miss in the one that was in the book, spelling Khufu's name that was not correct in the printed book, and then that was exactly copied, say, kind of, let's say, word for word or hieroglyph for hieroglyph, and whoever did that was a pork chop, an idiot, because they didn't realize they were making that mistake and repeating the mistake, and therefore the only writing found in there was intentional, to try and mislead people into believing that was the Khufu's home, well, at least burial site. So I think we've mentioned all that anyway before. So this mistake, the mistake itself, having been found, the words being found and disguised, being found to be a mistake, is unthinkable for ancient Egyptian writers. They didn't make those mistakes, and it's explainable on the background of 1837 that they should do this. In that year, an academic book about hieroglyphs had been published, and that's the Materia Hieroglyphica, in which the name of Khufu was written in there by mistake. I mentioned that, and the whole expedition stood under a bad sign. The money had run out, and nothing what had been hoped for had been achieved. So a member of the expedition planned to spice it up, and there you go. And history is written. Mickey.
Correct.
Yes, that's right.
Go on.
I don't need to say anymore because we've mentioned it. Megalithic structures all over the world, and I love this part because there's similar tooling marks, and there's similar in appearance of structures. And I don't need to tell our listeners, Meki, but if you're new to this, then you will understand that they are identical in appearance, like someone went to the same school and taught everybody. Mm-hmm. It's as though they were all in cahoots with each other, or all learned at the same university, for instance. Mm-hmm. How could that be if we all spoke a different language at the time? Because around the world, we also discovered the same thing, Meki, the Tools Down event. Something happened about 12,500 years ago where all of those megalithic structures ceased to be constructed. But I don't mean ceased as in they'd finished. There was still partly hewn rock, not even moved from the quarry. That's the kind of tools down, like they're on strike. No, we're not going to fight those aliens, the invaders, I don't know, whatever it was. Whatever it was, large meteor impact, that was the end. No one was going back to work. And the same thing would happen today if we had a large meteor impact. And, the shipping lanes were gone. Most civilization was destroyed. Those who remained aren't going to start shipping big rocks away to cart them 50 miles down the road to build some monument for somebody anymore. If the only thing that's left is you and your family. You're just not going to do it. So the one that I like is... Oh, Mackie, you can do Baalbek.
I'll do Baalbek.
Yeah.
Now, see, Baalbek is a very interesting place because it is part of the megalithic structures that Dave just spoke about, and we have there the largest monoliths we have in the world. There are 3 1,000-ton stones in the actual platform of the Temple of Jupiter, and there's several other 1,000-ton monoliths in the quarry, which speaks to Dave's Tool Dawn event. And they weren't abandoned because there was a flaw within them. They just had been abandoned, full stop, gone. So whoever had worked on it was working on it one day and stopped working on it the next. Okay. That brings us to the Inca walls, of course, which are a perfect fit, if you've ever seen them. If you've ever been lucky enough to go there, you can test it for yourself. There was no mortar involved. They are earthquake-proof. Not only that, I think the one has got like 12 sides to it, and it's fitted perfectly with its surroundings. Now, today we can do it easily with a computer. You just pre-plan it, and then you just do whatever you need. You cut it perfectly, and then you do it. But again, the problem that you had in the ancient times was the tools they used, as well as the size of the stones themselves, which weigh several tons. And you have to ask yourself why. Not so much how, because it was done. It was done, so one day hopefully we'll figure out how. But the question becomes why, because the why leads us then to think, if it was done like this all over the world, right? These massive stones, heavy stones, unwieldy stones that were used in constructions, then the answer must be because, well, that's just what we do. Like, let's see Dave. Let's say I walk down the street, I see Dave eating an ice cream. Oh my God, Dave! Why are you eating this ice cream? Dave goes, because that's what I do. It's my thing, right? Because I can eat the ice cream, right? And this is really the answer as well, because we can build with these massive blocks. We can. You can't? You have a problem? I want to put this in perspective. To move a 1,000-ton rock, and so you have to, first of all, you have to quarry it. You have to find the proper bedrock. You have to quarry it. You have to quarry it in such a way that you don't actually damage it, right? So very carefully, and then you lift it out. If there any if you've done something wrong, if there's maybe like a hairline crack, it was all for naught because it's unusable. So you have to be very careful in the way you quarry it. So that's number one. Number two, okay, let's see you've done that. You've quarried it very carefully. That's wonderful, beautiful. Off you go. Then you have the problem of, well, how do I move it? How do I move it? Now, could I, roll it along on wooden, rollers like trees and such? Yeah, I guess I could. It would take an awful lot of trees to do that. And but remember, it weighs 1,000 tons, right? So you need an awful lot of. Yes, that's correct. Yeah. It's an awful lot of logs that you would have to use, and a lot of people as well. Today, if we wanted to lift 1,000-ton anything really, we would have to construct a special crane. Can we do it? Yes. But we're not equipped to do it right now. If we had the order to do it, we could build a crane, and then the crane could come along and lift that 1,000-ton thing into the air. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just about the transportation, because this is the funny thing. These 1,000-ton stones, the 3 of them that are actually in the platform, they're not
That's what we can see.
Yes, that's true, but they're not on the ground level. They're not on the ground. They actually lifted a couple of stories up. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you go, what? Because when you see it, I urge you to look at Google, find some pictures, go there yourself. You can, probably not a good time right now. And it looks like a movie set for the Thief of Baghdad. Massive, gargantuan. It looks like it was built by giants. I guess that's how some of the legends came about. But it is quite something. But Dave, why don't you tell us about Abydos?
So there's a lintel over a doorway, and if you don't know what a lintel is, it just stops the rocks falling in from above, which has a number of glyphs, and there's 4 that I like the most. 3 of them are perfect for what they are depicting. But when it was first viewed. There was some footage on film before the 40s when we invented a helicopter. It was post-World War II. And there's an exact to scale, glyph of like an Apache helicopter. There's also like an offshore powerboat, and there's like a planey kind of thing. That one's still, I don't think we've made that one yet. But to make a point here, the lintel in science says that, these were stylized things, objects of the day, and it just happenstance. It's pareidolia that you should see that there's a helicopter. Just pareidolia, don't worry about it. Yeah, but it's an exact match. You put them over each other perfectly to scale. The odds to which that would occur are astronomical. You're better off buying a lotto ticket and expecting to lose when you win. So this to me is extraordinary. And look, it resurfaced after we made a helicopter. And when we got to that one in particular, then it seemed to make entire sense that, that's what it is. The offshore powerboat, I've got a YouTube where we talk about it. But just to say this, is there a point in time, we're still using those helicopters today, the Apache. So is there a point or a weapon or a thing that we create or something we encounter, Meki, where they go back in time to a time before the Abydos temple was built, or during its construction, or at a time when it existed, it is new, and these stories were written down that this thing appeared in the air, right? And we've documented it.
I think, honestly, that's as good an explanation as any other. Simply because well, look, you can't deny the existence of it. There it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And other things as well. There are many other things. I mean, one of the craziest things are, of course, the little gold figurines they found in South America that looked like delta wing planes.
Yes.
And people say, no, they're stylized insects. Stylized insects don't have
delta
rudders.
Wings. Yes, right. They don't have a vertical rudder, yeah.
Well, that's because that's what they have tail. If there was just a tail, you go, okay, fair enough, it's just an insect. But it's got a side rudder, which you need for flight stabilization. What?
And they've made scaled up versions of those, and they fly perfectly.
And they fly.
Yes.
That's the key thing. They also found a gliding plane in an Egyptian tomb,
mm-hmm.
made out of wood, and it also showed advanced knowledge of aerodynamics.
Mm-hmm.
So it flew as well. So I think the ancients knew a lot more than we give them credit for, and maybe they remembered a lot more from the cataclysms that went before. Because
that's a good point.
If something goes sideways in your civilization, right, some things will be remembered. Some in stories,
yeah.
Right. Language. In fact, if you look at some of the other things here, there's the myths around the Vimanas. Voice-controlled doors, like
mm-hmm.
in Arabian Nights. Open sesame. Today, that's not amazing. In fact, doors open at our approach. We don't even think about it.
No.
We complain it if it doesn't work. That's what we do.
No, that's right.
Flying chariots in every culture.
Mm-hmm.
Has some version of flying chariot. The Bible references. There's similar flood myths across the globe, and we spent a lot of time on flood myths, and they are reinforced by their differences rather than their similarities.
We read out each of the stories from all around the world.
Correct. There are linguistic similarities across the world. There are language or linguistic islands which we can't explain
mm-hmm.
as well. And Charles Berlitz gave some great examples in his books. Another crazy thing is that Jonathan Swift mentioned Phobos and Deimos and their specific properties in Gulliver's Travels, which was published in 1726, but they were only discovered, Phobos and Deimos, that is, in 1877.
That's the truth.
Right? And then people say, oh, yeah, but he didn't get it exactly right. He guessed it pretty good.
Yeah, I think they were down to the hour of their orbit times.
Yeah, but also he guessed there would be two of them with
mm-hmm.
very specific properties. I mean, as far as guess, I mean that's darn good guess. But we also have old maps, a lot of old maps that show geographical features that should have been unknown at the time of the map's creation, unless, of course, maybe they were copied from older maps. And it also shows an awareness of the Earth's curvature before that official discovery.
And there's a map showing Antarctica's edge without ice.
Ice free.
And it predates any journey there in our current civilization.
Correct. Now, people have been trying to debunk and say, it isn't so, and fair enough, Joe. Look, people try it all the time, but nonetheless, there are these things. And look, everybody has to make up their own mind about these things, okay? And Charles Hapgood, he spent a great deal of time on it, and Einstein was quite taken by his theories, as well as Immanuel Velikovsky, who wrote the book Worlds in Collision, again around polar reversal and the destruction of an ancient civilization. Then, of course, the biggest matzo ball of them all, which is the moon. They've now made a moon movie called Moonfall, I think.
That's right.
Where they are saying it's actually a megastructure, etc., etc. It turns out, yes, it is a megastructure, and etc. And to be honest with you, nothing about the moon makes any sense. Okay, it just doesn't fit. It's especially the relationship between the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon. Makes no sense at all. Many scientists, I think Asimov, in fact, said it best. It is easier to explain the moon's non-existence than its existence, because it doesn't make sense.
And we also did a show on before the moon.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there's quotes from Earth people, and even including the Bible, where there was a time before the moon.
Now, let's just think about this. Just let's unpack it just for a second, because we're there anyway. So let's say again, remember, this is the shiny side up, right? So I'm allowed to say whatever I like. Let's just say for a second there was a time when there was no moon. What kind of planet could we expect? Now, I'm going to postulate here that at that time the Earth's axis was also not bent, so meaning there was no wobble. So there were no seasons. Wherever you were on the planet, that's pretty much the weather for the year. Okay, so just imagine that for a second. Okay, because we only have seasons because the Earth is slightly tilted around its axis as it goes around the sun. Okay, so no moon and no tilt of the Earth's axis. What kind of world would that be? Well, it's a world where you know exactly what to expect, more or less, because it doesn't change. There wouldn't be any great tides. Yes, there would be waves still because of the Earth's rotation. Yes, but there wouldn't be any great tides coming in and out because there would be nothing drawing the water away or back again. So it would be a fairly, I guess, placid place, if you will. Okay, it would be fairly, I guess, predictable as well. The kind of world that you might expect to live on if you were describing, like a more paradisical outlook on life. Because again, there wouldn't be any terrible surprises, right? There are no seasons. Seasons don't exist. The weather is what it is all year round, wherever you are. And no moon. And if there's no moon, then you probably appreciate the night sky a bit more, because you can see a lot more, stars. There'd be less light pollution even in the sky. But then, what would happen if the moon came into orbit? Let's just play that through. If an object like the moon, and it's massive, and this is another thing, compared to the Earth, our moon is massive. And there's no other moon-planet relationship that we know of that is in similar size proportions to ours. If a body like that came around into orbit around our Earth, it would cause massive upheaval.
Well, that's true. The gravitational effect would cause earthquakes and all sorts of crazy
floods and God knows what.
Volcanoes.
It would be massive. Like and we would remember it. I can tell you that we would remember it, which is interesting because, and I always puzzled about this. The moon was the more important deity for some ancient cultures in comparison to the sun. Yeah, some ancient cultures, they say the sun is the most important, but others said, no, the moon is the most important. Now, the moon is magnitudes less in brightness than the sun. It's the same size as the sun, sure enough, but you can see that the sun is the life giver and the moon is just a shadow of it, really. Nonetheless, those ancient cultures described it more importance than the sun. Now, if a body of this nature had come into your life at some point and you remembered it, then you would say, oh yeah, it was pretty momentous when the moon came. I mean, we always said the sun, but then the moon came and things changed. Tell you what, there was an angry day that day, and it was the moon that caused it. So, I don't know. I don't think the moon is a natural object. I really don't. I don't think it is.
Well, it'd be nice if that was the home of the Watchers, Mickey.
Maybe it is.
Could be.
Again, if you look again, when we talk about the Anunnaki, I know this is taking us a little bit further away, but let's talk about the Anunnaki just for a second. The Anunnaki came to our planet, and according to their own stories, they started digging up the Tigris and Euphrates.
Yep.
So this is a civilization that terraforms. Well, terraform is probably the wrong word here. That modifies a planet to their own liking. They're digging rivers. Chances are they're building mountains. They're creating valleys. Because digging rivers, that's quite an undertaking, okay? So they're conforming the landscape to what they want. Right? They came here ostensibly to mine gold. Good for them. But if you have a civilization that can terraform on that scale, would you really put it out of their reach to build a moon? Would you? We're talking, we can't do this today. Yes, we can dig canals, and channels, and we've done it, right? It took a long time, it was a lot of effort, and they're not very big. But we're talking about the civilization that changed the landscape of an entire region. It dug 2 rivers all the way from the mountains in Turkey, what is today Turkey, down into the south, right, to the Persian Gulf. Rivers. They dug out rivers and created an extremely fertile land that way, or at least so legend goes. Right.
And did you know that if you look at where they enter the Gulf, they entered the Gulf at a time when the sea level was lower?
Yes.
Because you can see the cutout where it would have flowed over the edge down to the Gulf water.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's right. You see, that's, and again, in my opinion, we discussed this before, since we're talking about ancient civilization, we're looking at all the wrong places. And Dave just quite rightly pointed out that the water in the sea level was a lot lower during the last ice age. A lot lower, meaning a lot more land was exposed, meaning the coastal lines and river banks wouldn't be where they are today. In fact, the Mediterranean might very well have been dry during the last ice age, or not nearly as big a body of water that it is today. But we know for a fact that the water rose 100 meters. 100 meters.
That's right.
I know we talked about this ad nauseum, but just imagine where you are today, okay? And then look at how far above sea level you are, right? Just for for giggles, just to find out, and you realize, oh, geez, 100 meters would really put a massive matzo ball in my chicken soup. And
you can only imagine. So where we've built on the water's edge, if you go down to where the next level of that water would be, that's where we'd be. We'd be on the mountaintops.
Yes.
Or on the hilltops. Yes. Where we are, we wouldn't be waterside.
Correct.
Exactly. And that has to be considered.
Yeah, and we're facing that again. We're facing a massive deluge again because of the rapid melting of the land.
Too close to the water.
Built too close to the water. Because we like to. That's who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to be at the beach.
And we'll do it again.
Yeah, of course. It's just our nature.
Mm-hmm.
And look, water makes it easy to transport things. There's this abundant food, usually in water as well, etc., etc.
Yay buoyancy or displacement. Yay displacement.
Yeah, but the problem is is land ice.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Once land ice melts, the water, the sea levels will rise.
Mm-hmm.
Water ice is irrelevant. Okay, water ice is already there. It's already displacing all the volume that it would displace as liquid water.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ice, the glaciers on land that we have to worry about. Well, which brings us though. So let's say we've discussed the moon and civilizations, etc., that are potentially able to build planetary-sized structures. What about destroying them, Dave? Because the asteroid belt, right?
Yeah, well, that's right. Now there's a discussion still, unanswered discussion. Well, the Sumerian text suggests that the early Earth was hit, it was struck. So Tiamat was hit by another planetary body, and it dislodged it from its orbit. The debris left. Now NASA has initially, said no, we'll look at it, and when actually that makes a ton of sense. And you would have received that grant money because it was just basically reading the Sumerian text out loud. And they've said yes, that is entirely what it appears to have been. In fact, the Pacific Basin itself is a different strata and is the rear side, according to NASA, the rear side of the planet that's smacked into the early Earth. And the ring of fire around the edge is that edge of what was left of that planet. Now, there's discussion that the Earth was all the way out as far as the asteroid belt, and its debris is what was left of the two planets left behind as the Earth changed its orbit. Maybe it just, maybe it slowed up. Maybe it hit from the other side, from the leading edge, and it dove inward towards the center of the solar system. Because Bode's law, Bode was pretty clever, right? So Bode's law suggests that every amount of AU, with astronomical units of planet size, Bode's law suggests that there should be a planet there. And it's very close to what we find in our solar system, except where there's a gap, where the asteroid belt is. And there's also a weird thing. He says that's where a planet should be, but then Neptune looks like it might have been an intruder.
Yes.
So we've got stories of the Anunnaki and whether they were on a spaceship or a planet that visits every 3,600 years on some kind of really crazy steep orbit. Very narrow one. And that was thrown about as Planet X a long, long time ago. And I'm gonna tell you here that Voyager 1 and 2 were sent out on the two mathematical extremities of an arc to look for the next planet, for what was then Planet X, which is planet 10, but since they've deleted Pluto, that's really Planet 9 now. Planet X wasn't X for we don't know what it is, it was 10. So it's a bit of a shame. Planet X was determined by Bode's law to be out at 77.2 AUs.
It's almost twice the distance of Pluto.
That's right. So you've got to think about this. So the Anunnaki told the Sumerians about what our solar system looks like, and that we were on the 7th planet in, which is extraordinary.
Yes.
Describes the size, the relational size between them all, the color, the rotational angles, all of those things were described to them before we had a science of today but maybe there was then. Maybe there's been, because that was said to be when they arrived maybe 250,000 years ago down in Africa. So don't know at the moment, because unless they return and we can interview them. That'd be good to get the Anunnaki on the show, wouldn't it?
That would be great.
I'll give you a boon. It'd be a boon for this channel. So you've got to just have to appreciate how a civilization that its language was an isolate. It came from nowhere. The Sumerians suddenly had culture with art, farming, a policing system, a form of government. They had health, and they came from nowhere. But when you read the text, the Sumerian text, they said all these people came down and showed us what to do. In fact, they didn't just show us; they made us. So they made us, they came from here, they did this, and this is what they said, blah, blah, blah. And all of that appeared to have been an oral transcribing of a story from them as they were leaving. That's what the whole thing seems to be. So it was as accurate as the last person leaving knew. And I think that's awesome. And the more I hear today, Mickey, that science has gone this direction and is looking at something, and I find something that's already been mentioned by the Sumerians that the Anunnaki had said, it just cements more and more that story, and we should not ignore the stories of the ancient people on the planet.
Look, I think that's critically important.
Because we find more is true, right?
Yeah, but it's also a very nice segue that you're giving us here. Because what we're trying to do in the show, we're trying to give you primary sources. A primary source is someone that was there, essentially, right? Written or otherwise. Then you get secondary sources. But we try to find as many primary sources as we can. And luckily for us, there are some really good translations of the cuneiform texts available. So what we're going to share with you next is the Atrahasis epic, which is abridged, which is very long, so we didn't give you the whole thing. And we discussed in the Igigi show cycle at length. Okay, it is important here because it is one of the oldest and most detailed creation myths that we have at our disposal. Okay, that's why it's important to look at this here now, right? The capability of the Anunnaki, as it were. And this particular translation was made by Stephanie Daly. And you can make yourself available. So you can avail yourself of it yourself if you go to genius.com, and then it's translated by Stephanie Daly, the Atrahasis epic annotated. So https genius.com, and then look for translated by Stephanie Daly. Get it there yourself if you so wish. It's a great free resource. Okay, so now this was written thousands of years ago. It's one of the oldest things that we have. And that we can still read because someone has translated it, as I said, Stephanie Daly. When the gods, instead of man, did the work, bore the loads. The gods' load was too great, the work too hard, the trouble too much. The great Anunnaki made the Igigi carry the workload sevenfold. Anu, their father, was king. The gods had to dig out canals, had to clear channels, the lifelines of the land. The gods dug out the Tigris River and then dug out the Euphrates. Now, it's interesting that the Sumerians believed that the rivers were dug out by the gods. There aren't terribly many other myths around gods digging out rivers. Because for most people, a river, well, that's just there. It just happened. But no, very specifically, these gods dug out the Tigris and then subsequently the Euphrates. They were counting the years of loads. For 3,600 years, they bore the excess, hard work night and day. They groaned and blamed each other, grumbled over the masses of excavated soil. Let us confront our Chamberlain and get him to relieve us of our hard work. Come, let us carry the Lord, the counsellor of the gods, the warrior from his dwelling. Then we don't know, there's a bit of a break in the text, made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. The gods, and there's missing text here, the gods listened to his speech, set fire to their tools, put aside their spades for fire, their loads for the fire god, they flared up. When they reached the gate of Varya Elid's dwelling, it was night, the middle watch. The house was surrounded. The god had not realized when they reached the gate of Varya Elil's dwelling, it was night, the middle watch. Echo was surrounded. Elil had not realized, Dave.
My lord, your house is surrounded. A rabble is running around your door. Elil, your house is surrounded. Nushku barred his door, took up his weapons and stood in front of Elil. Nushku made his voice heard and spoke to the warrior Elil. Oh, my lord, your face is sallow with damarisk. Why do you fear your own sons? Elil made his voice heard and spoke to the great gods. It is against me that they have risen. Shall I do battle? What did I see with my own eyes? A rabble was running around my door. Anu made his voice heard and spoke to the warrior Elil. Let Nushku go out and find out the word of the Igigi who have surrounded your door. Elil made his voice heard and spoke to the vizier Nushku. Nushku, open your door. Take up your weapons and stand before me. Then there are gaps here. Nushku opened his door, took up his weapons, went before Elil in the assembly of all the gods. He bowed, then stood and told the message. Your father Anu, the counselor warrior Elil, your chamberlain Ninurta, and your canal controller Inugi have sent me to say, who is in charge of the rabble? Who is in charge of the fighting? Who declared war? Who ran to the door of Elil? Meki.
Elil. Every single one of us declared war. We have put a stop to the digging. The load is excessive. It is killing us. Our work is too hard. The trouble too much. So every single one of us gods has agreed to complain to Elil. Nushku took his weapons, went and returned to Elil. There's another break. Elil listened to that speech. His tears flowed. Elil spoke guardedly, addressed the warrior Anu. Noble one, take a decree with you to the sky. Show your strength. While the Anunnaki are sitting before you, call up one god and let them cast him for destruction. Anu made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. What are we complaining of? Their work was indeed too hard. Their trouble was too much. Every day the earth resounded. The warning signal was loud enough. We kept hearing the noise. Then there's a bit more break in the text. While the Anunnaki are sitting before you, and while Belet Ili, the womb goddess, is present, call up one and cast him for destruction. Your father Anu, your counselor warrior Elil, have sent me to say, who is in charge of the rebel? Who is in charge of the fighting? Which god started the war? A rebel was running around Elil's door. Ea made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. Why are we blaming them? Their work was too hard. Their trouble was too much. Every day the earth resounded. The warning signal was loud enough. We kept hearing the noise. Belet Ilil, the womb goddess, is present. Let her create a mortal man, so that he may bear the yoke, the work of Elil. Let man bear the load of the gods. Belet Ili, the womb goddess, is present. Let the womb goddess create offspring, and let them bear the load of the gods. They called up the goddess and asked, the midwife of the gods, wise Mami, you are the womb goddess, to be the creator of mankind. Create a mortal that he may bear the yoke. Let him bear the yoke, the work of Elil. Let him bear the load of the gods. Dave?
Nintu made her voice heard and spoke to the great gods. On the 1st, 7th, and 15th of the month, I shall make purification by washing. Then one god should be slaughtered, and the gods can be purified by immersion. Nintu shall mix the clay with his flesh and blood. Then a god and a man will be mixed together in clay. Let us hear the drumbeat forever after. Let a ghost come into existence from the god's flesh. Let her proclaim it as her living sign, and let the ghost exist so as not to forget the slain god. They answered yes in the assembly, the great Anunnaki who assign the fates. And there's a gap. I have carried out perfectly the work that you ordered of me. You have slaughtered a god together with his intelligence. I have relieved you of your hard work. I have imposed your load on man. You have bestowed noise on man. You have bestowed noise on mankind. I have undone the fetter and the granted freedom. They listened to the speech of hers and were freed from anxiety and kissed her feet. We used to call you Mami, but now your name shall be Mistress of all gods. Far-sighted Enki and wise Mami went into the room of fate. The womb goddesses were assembled. He trod the clay in her presence. She kept reciting an incantation, for Enki staying in her presence made her recite it. When she had finished her incantation, she pinched off 14 pieces of clay and set 7 pieces on the right, 7 on the left. Between them, she put down a mud brick. She made use of a reed, opened it, and to cut the umbilical cord. Called up the wise and knowledgeable womb goddesses 7 and 7, 7 created males, 7 created females, for the womb goddess is creator of fate. He, ... then 2 by 2, ... them 2 by 2 in her presence. Mami made these rules for people. Meki.
In the house of a woman who is giving birth, the mud brick shall be put down for 7 days. Bel and Ili, wise Mami, shall be honored. The midwife shall rejoice in the house of the woman who gives birth. And when the woman gives birth to the baby, the mother of the baby shall sever herself. A man to a girl, break in the text, another break, her bosom. A beard can be seen on a young man's cheek in gardens and waysides. A wife and her husband choose each other. That's extremely modern, isn't it? If you think about that. A wife and a husband choose each other. None of that patriarchal nonsense we have today. The womb goddesses were assembled, and Nintu was present. They counted the months, called up the 10th month as the term of fates. When the 10th month came, she slipped in the staff and opened the womb. Her face was glad and joyful. She covered her head, performed the midwifery. That's almost like she's putting on her scrubs.
Mm-hmm.
Put on her belt, said a blessing. She made a drawing in flour and put down a mud brick. And then there's quite a bit of break. 600 years, less than 600 passed, ? It's, some incomplete text. And the country was as noisy as a bellowing bull. The god grew restless at their racket. Enlil had to listen to their noise. He addressed the great gods. The noise of mankind has become too much. I'm losing sleep over their racket. Give the order that the Surupu disease shall break out. And the Surupu disease is actually translated, Surupu means frost or cold.
1 minute.
Oh, jeez. We won't have time. Let's just pause it here then. But what we've seen here, like again, one of the oldest texts there is, and it seems to be a lot more detailed and more sensical. I mean, why was mankind created? To work.
Mm-hmm.
In the Bible, mankind was created, well, we don't know why, to be honest. We don't know why.
Well, remember, worship comes from the word workship, where you worked for the gods.
You're right. And I think that's exactly what happened here, interestingly enough. And the process on how this was accomplished is also quite detailed. In the Bible, it was said that God formed Adam from mud. Oh, there's the music. We'll have more next week.
Yeah, we will. And stay tuned for Jer Bear's awesome show, After Hours, coming up next to bring you to daylight time. Take care, everyone. And we'll see you during the week on Tuesday morning, 7 and Thursday at 7 a.m. for breakfast. David Mecker, Plato's Dave. Good luck with that. Take care.